Hi, this is Richard Millington from Indispensable Consulting, and today I'm going to tell you about a time where I lost $78,000, but I learned an incredibly valuable lesson. So 6 years later, I'm still haunted by this. Back in 2017, I agreed to an $80,000 deal with a major car brand for a consultancy project. And it was a big win, and I remember feeling really excited about the outcome. And then out of the blue, their procurement team contacted me and invited me to participate in the negotiation. And I was like, huh? What? I thought we'd already had the negotiation. They asked me to send them my best offer. Now, I had learned from authors of consulting books and blogs to never ever reduce your fee without reducing the scope of work. So I asked them what their budget was, and they simply replied that they were only looking for my best offer. I replied again, asking them what was wrong with the current quote I sent through, and they said again they needed the best offer to work with. I offered to reduce the scope of work if the budget was a concern, and they replied again, insisting that the scope of work must remain the same, but I must send my best offer immediately. Now, I knew my relationship with my primary contact was really strong, and there was no way procurement were going to kill the project, especially when we had spent so much time, money, and energy developing this already. So I replied, the current price is the best offer. It turns out procurement could and did kill the deal, and 6 months later they found another firm to do the project with. I learned a lot later that if I just reduced the fee by $2,000, the deal would have gone sailing through. Essentially, my pride and some very bad advice cost me $78,000. But I think there's two important lessons here. One, be really careful of blindly following advice. Unless someone has genuinely undertaken a study to assess which practices can be generalized across an entire profession, which is extremely rare, their advice reflects their personal experiences at best, or their need to get attention at worst. The latter is often achieved by saying stuff which sounds like it should work, but it really doesn't. I include myself in this bracket too. I can write and share advice on my observations and personal experiences, but you should always let your unique situation and common sense overrule any advice I share. The other thing I learned is that some procurement teams are measured by the difference between the initial price and the final price. The procurement team I was working with had zero interest in selecting the best vendor or even whether the project was a success. The only thing that mattered to them was getting a discount. If you offer them a discount, the deal goes through. If you don't, it doesn't. Now, you can argue this is more of a shakedown than a negotiation, and that's completely true. You can also take an honorable stand against this by refusing to lower your fee. But who really wins in that situation? You get a reputation as someone who doesn't know how big organizations work or someone that is difficult to work with, and your client has to hire someone that isn't as good as you. Now, sure, if every consultant refused to negotiate, then you might just make all organizations change their ways. And if you want to spend your time doing that, please go ahead. But the harsh reality is you have to adopt a flexible mindset to work with larger organizations and learn how to navigate their processes if you want to succeed. Almost any proposal process, you need to make concessions to please different stakeholders, and it's best to simply treat the procurement team as another stakeholder you need to satisfy. The good news is I learned a lot from this. And these days, I check with my primary contact what the approval process actually looks like. If they mention the project goes through a procurement team, I can factor this into my calculations. If I feel they're going to negotiate me down on price, I can ensure that's reflected in the initial price I offer them. Likewise, if I'm randomly surprised by a procurement person, I'm a lot more savvy about playing the game to get the project through. Let me give you an example of how this worked. Around 6 months ago, a procurement person called me regarding the cost of an $18,000 project. And from memory, I'm not entirely sure, but from memory, his pitch was something like, we've compared your quotes to those of competitors, and we need you to lower your fee by $6,000 to secure the project. Now, I knew this was a fib. In fact, it's a very common fib told by a lot of procurement teams. I'm in a very small niche, and I know nearly all my competitors, and I've worked with the same client repeatedly over the years. If my contact was sourcing other options, I would have heard about it by now, and it would have taken a lot more time. But I embraced the fib, and I replied, Mr. Smith, and I'll call him Mr. Smith for now, already mentioned the budget was really tight, so we kept the figure as lean as possible. If we go any lower, this project will be unprofitable for us. If competitors can do it for $6,000 less, I don't know how they're doing that. But if you think the quality is the same, you should go with them. We can't go that low. My goal at this point is to avoid $6,000 becoming the anchor discount price. And I need him to concede, even implicitly, that he was fibbing about competitors. And his response was this: well, we might have some wiggle room here. How flexible can you be? Now notice, he's now abandoning the "you must match your competitors" line and is looking for a new anchor point. Whatever figure I give him, he's going to ask for double. I replied along the lines of, not very flexible unfortunately. What would it take to get this project through? At this point, I'm asking him directly, what would be an acceptable figure? We're both looking for a new anchor price in the negotiation. And his response was, we don't have the budget for an $18,000 project, so you're going to have to give some ground. What's the best that you can do? Notice how the reasons for asking for a discount have shifted from matching competitors to not having the budget. It's apparent at this point that both are simply a cover reason for wanting to show a cost saving. So I replied, well, we still need to make a profit on this, so the best I can do is about $500 less. Does that work for you? I'm trying to set the lowest possible anchor price here without removing it from the table altogether. His response was, it will need to be at least $1,500. Now that's quite a dramatic shift from the initial $6,000 that he wanted. At least now he's stopped pretending his excuses are valid. We both seem to be on the same page about the game that we're playing here. So again I replied, I'll go up to $1,000, but that's as far as I'll go. He replied back, can you do $1,200? I can improve that today. I replied once more, I'll go up to $1,050, but that's it. And that's where we landed. I suspect there might be a limit that procurement teams must save, probably around $1,000 to approve a project. And I think we both probably left the call feeling quite satisfied with the outcome. He saved his company over $1,000 in a 15-minute call. That's not a bad outcome, and I can see why doing this for every vendor does make sense. I only had to give up $1,000 to get a project through a procurement team. And there are some lessons from this. Terms like at least, best offer, as high as low as we can go, they sound absolute and inflexible, and most of the time they're just tactics. As we've seen above, we both compromised repeatedly on our previous best position to find something that works for us. Second, even if you know someone is lying in a negotiation, don't call them out on them. That will only put them in a defensive posture and make them less likely to compromise. Besides, if you know one side is lying and you have knowledge that they don't, that's an advantage that you have that they don't have. You can embrace that lie to your advantage. Don't get angry or aggressive. Both of us on this call were generally quite happy. We both knew early on we were playing a game and it didn't become aggressive or competitive. It wasn't about either of us winning, but generally finding the limits of what we were each willing to accept. Once the figure was agreed, we chatted quite happily about the next steps, but if you get angry, the other party is going to get defensive. Again, this means they're going to be less willing to compromise. You need to negotiate with a smile. Next, anchor prices matter. Don't embrace the initial anchor price in the negotiation. That $6,000 was exactly 33% of the project, and I'm betting that's their standard tactic they use all the time. If you begin with their anchor price, you'll end up far closer to their side of the equation than your side. You need to take that initial anchor price off the table and set a new one. Next, you need to give a justification. For some reason, you just need to justify every figure you give. Even if that justification is paper thin, people seem to need a rationale to accept the figure presented to them. Next, know your real limit. You might wonder why I was happy about losing $1,050 in a 15-minute call. That's because I knew my personal limit was $3,000. So giving up $1,000 felt like a pretty good result to me. Anyway, I hope that helped in how you think about negotiation. That's all for now. Good luck.